Yuki as a senior Android developer since 2020. And you can also find me around the net on Medium, GitHub, X, and on my personal website, of course. Before we get into it, let me make a few things clear. The first one is that we at Ayuki, we do white labeling. So this means we're building multiple apps out of a single code base. Then we committed to a bi-weekly release. This means every second week we release all of our apps without excuse. And before we did the changes I will present you today, our average release time were about 30 minutes. All right, let me tell you a story. Sometime in 2022, our company decided to do a penetration test. If you not know what a penetration test is, in a nutshell, a mostly external company simulates real-world security-related attacks against your software, so in our case, against our Android apps, to find security-related problems. And this is what they did. And one of their recommendations was that we should obfuscate our source code with ProGuard, or nowadays R8. Honestly, this was on our roadmap for quite a long time already, but because of different things, it was not tackled yet. But this gave us the final push to say, okay, now we want to tackle this and implement this. So we did it, and on the next release day, all of a sudden, the release build time went from 30 minutes to 86 minutes. But actually, that was not all. Because before we enabled R8, we used a machine with less specifications, so with less CPU cores and less RAM. And therefore, if you would have stick to the old machine with less specs, then the build time would be even increased by 90 minutes. And those 90 minutes are kind of a special number because we had a CI plan where we had a build timeout of 90 minutes. So if we reach or exceed those 90 minutes, then the build would immediately stop, and that's it, end of story. So we could not release our apps anymore. One might say, well, 86 minutes and 90 minutes, so yeah, you are in range, so go ahead with that. Where's the problem? Using a machine with more CPU power and more RAM is totally fine, right? But remember, we are doing white labeling apps, and it could happen kind of at any time that we create a new white label app, and therefore also have to publish them to the stores. And that's very likely that we would then exceed those 90 minutes. So our solution was disabling R8 again. But think about this. Was it a solution, or was it rather a hotfix? So we ask us why. Why did we end up in such a situation, right? And we found out that, well, this is our business. We're building multiple apps. This is just how it works at Ayuki. So it's just likely that we have a higher build time in general as you would have in other companies where you just build a single app, right? Another fact, which we unfortunately found out afterwards, is that R8 runs only in sequence. So you can configure Gradle, which is a build tool of Android apps, that it will run tasks in parallel. So it's possible that you build multiple apps in parallel, but unfortunately not if you have the R8 compiler enabled. Then the apps will be compiled one after the other. So if app 1 is finished, then app 2 starts. And if app 2 is finished compiling, then the third app starts to build. Another thing is that we had only a single CI workflow to build and publish all of our apps. So as you can see here on the right side on the picture, this is a screenshot of our back then release workflow file. And you can see there's a single step, which is called build and publish to Play Store. And this is where all the magic happened, right? There were really 67 apps were built, and afterwards via Google APIs published to the Play Store. But this problem was even this was not a single only problem we had with the single workflow. Because, well, we are all humans and we are developers, we make mistakes, right? So it could happen that we have to create hot fixes for single apps. It doesn't happen that often, but it happens. And with the single workflow, we are literally not possible to publish and release a single app, right? It's all or nothing. Another thing which faced us randomly was that the Google servers returns an HTTP status code 500. And well, remember, we not only build in this workflow all of our apps, we also publish them over Google APIs to the Play Store. And sometimes randomly we got a 500 from the Google servers, and this could happen at any time. It could happen after the building or publishing the first white label app, or after the 10th, or even after the second last white label app. So this was really 100% random. So for us, it was clear that we have to find a way out of this situation, right? So what we did, we put 2 sheets of paper next to each other. On the left side, we wrote everything down, what we cannot change. And on the right side, we wrote everything down, what we can change. So what we definitely cannot change is that we're building multiple apps, right? This is the Ayuki business. This is how Ayuki works. What we cannot change is that R8 run sequentially. So theoretically, it would be possible. The R8 compiler, as well as the Android Gradle plugin, are open source, so we could contribute to this. But honestly, Ayuki has not the manpower yet to do this. So therefore, we decided this is the thing we don't want to do or want to change. Again, bugs happen. Hot fixes are required for single apps from time to time. Even so, we committed to a 4 eyes review thing. So 2 developers have to review 1 pull request. It still happened that we have to that we have bugs or other issues in our apps and therefore need hot fixes. And what we also cannot change, because we are not in contract with the Google SRE team, that the status code 500 thingy will be returned from the Google servers. But actually what we can change is the single CI workflow to build all of our apps, right? So let's change the only thing we can change, right? Here's a visual representation of our workflow. So this is our single workflow, and you can see the white label app 0 has to be built before the white label app 1 can be built, and this has to be finished until the white label app 2 can be built. And well, imagine you are 3 or 4 years old people and see this tower of Lego bricks. What would you do? I guess we have the same in mind. We would simply knock this thing off and see all the bricks laying around on the floor, right? And actually, this is what we did, right? So instead of having a single workflow, which builds all of our apps, we decided that we have a single workflow for each of our apps. And therefore, a workflow builds focus only on building a single app and publishing to the Play Store. So how this is going to work, we have on top this so-called orchestra workflow. This is kind of the entry point and where everything starts. This does some pre-setup things like calculation the version code, calculation the version number, but as well as reading kind of file where all of our white label app information are living in. And based on those files, it will spin up as much as needed or required workflows, and therefore new machines and put the relevant information to those single workflow files to build the single app, right? And this is all the magic, right? And therefore we were able to build things in 7 minutes. So what did we fix with that? We fixed the problem that we could not build and publish single apps, because now a workflow is an isolated thing which focuses on only one app. We can now simply do this. All of a sudden, the Google server HTTP status code 500 problem disappeared, which was a bit strange, but all right, it was fixed. It might be the case that we got this 500 because we have a single workflow, and in a short amount of time, we call that quite often, quite frequently, right? Because if you publish 67 apps, then we touch them, and maybe there's some security related thing on the Google servers, who knows? And we also fixed the problem that we definitely will not exceed the build timeout anymore, because 7 minutes are far away from 90 minutes. And we scale now horizontally instead of vertically, right? So we don't have to use even bigger machine as more white label apps we add to our code base. Yes, you might say, well, now you're limited to the concurrent machine you have on your CI plan, right? And I have to admit, yes, you're right. But I can also tell you, this is not a problem for us right now, and this is also not a problem for the foreseen future for us. However, yes, we have been there. So in the past, at the beginning of all of this, we had just 30 concurrent machines available, and therefore we could only build and publish 30 apps in 7 minutes at the same time. And the other 30 apps will the workflow file, the machine would be idle for 7 minutes until the new machine is free, and then doing their work. So basically publishing in 14 minutes, right? But again, this is not a problem for us anymore, and not for the foreseen future for us. So a quick summary here. What we did, we improved our CI build time from 86 minutes to stable 7 minutes. And I really want to refer this wording stable here, because it's unlikely that we will see in the future such a high jump what we saw with we enabled R8, because now a workflow file will focus only on single app, right? And yes, we will add features, we fix bugs or adding resources to the app. So it might be increased in the future, but it will probably not jump as much as we saw with enabling R8. What we also did is, well, we replaced the single workflow with multiple ones. And we finally could enable R8. And well, this is where it starts, right? So we finally can fix and ship this feature. But honestly, for us, these changes were only possible because of the changes I will show you in a minute. But let me explain this. So the idea of splitting a single workflow file into multiple ones looks at the first look quite obvious, right? So where's the problem with this? But you also have to thought about the problems which comes with that. So because you don't want to waste resources, right? You don't want to waste time, and you don't want to have duplicate unnecessary work. So let me give you an example. Best example is with testing and linting. Remember, we are doing white labeling. So 95%, maybe even more, of the code base is the same for all of our apps, right? So if you now split the build time, the build process to different machines, then we don't want to test and lint the whole thing on each of those machines. It's just unnecessary, right? Because either the 95% or more code is succeeded, so it's fine and can be shipped, or everything fails, right? So how did we fix this? So before I go into this, I also want to explain you another thing up front. Those changes were not in purpose to fix our CI stuff, but they were completely unrelated to this one. We wanted to fix other processes, which I will explain you now. So for example, we changed our architecture. So as you can see here on the left side, before we had an application which contains a library, or well, it contains most of our code, and this also contains a library which is called libwla. So this is where all of our white label app specific implementation live in, right? So for example, the string overrides or the color changes and so on. And we changed this to the architecture you see on the right. So we basically just flipped this. So the library WLA is now the application, and the application, the former application, is now a new library which is called libcore, where all of our code lives in. And we did this not because we want to fix or change something on our CI process, but instead we as Ayoki grew and we want to split up responsibilities. So we had a new team which building kind of exclusively new white label apps, and they should not work in the whole code base, right? Which would be the case on the left side on the old architecture. But they should really work isolated on creating white label apps and do not touch core features or the core code. This is where the core Android team should work, right? So this is, again, we did this for another purpose, but this came quite handy for us when we did our CI changes, because this makes it possible to publish those library libcore to our Nexus. Nexus is a Maven repository, and well, we decided to every second week, as well as our apps, to publish the library part to the Nexus, because we want to have, well, it could happen that white label apps has to be created kind of on demand and has to be published directly to the Play Store. And if this is the case, then those new apps has to be shipped with the latest changes we did in our code base, right? And this is not what we want. When we create a new white label app, we want to immediately use the old source code like we have on the other already published white label apps. So we make sure that everything is stable and is tested and so on. We don't want to ship maybe broken or unfinished features, right? So we decided to publish the library to Nexus, and therefore linting and testing happens now on the library release day, which is either on Wednesday or something. And the apps now consume the library on their own app release day, right? So with these changes, it was possible that the apps new apps can be created and published without using new features or any changes, right? They can just use the old or existing library from our Nexus and can be make sure that those are safe to use, right? The attentive listener would now say, so actually you do not release in 7 minutes, right? Because you either have now this library release day on top of this. So it's a bit higher. And I have to admit, yes, you're right with that. So sure, you kind of have to add to the 7-minute app release the library release, which took around 15 minutes or something. But first, only once. So because we built only one time the library, which is 15 minutes kind of divided by 67 apps we have right now, so it's less than 30 seconds. I don't know. And on the other side, the apps, when they will be published, they don't have to update the library. They can simply say, I stick to the current version for whatever reasons, or the reason I just mentioned, and therefore we do the release without any library changes. So to summarize all of this, again, we improved the CI build time from 86 minutes to stable 7 minutes. We replaced the single workflow with multiple ones, and we enabled R8. But those were really only possible, if not even required, to have, because of our architecture and our Nexus implementation, right? Yes, that's it from my part. If you have any questions, I'm here. I guess we have a few minutes left. Otherwise, I'm also available in the Slack channel for a few hours more, and even tomorrow. So yeah, feel free to ask anything or right now. Happy to answer those questions. All right, I guess there are no questions. Then I would guess I drop out of this. Thank you very much again, and see you. Bye-bye.